Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Tonight, we're going to dive deep into Oklahoma City's victory over Denver, Dallas mauling the San Antonio Spurs. Then we're going to talk about a couple of games from last night, Houston and Charlotte, as well as Detroit and Indiana. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. All right, we're here. We're going to jump into some basketball, folks. Thanks for coming and joining live while we talk through this fun Oklahoma City Denver game. I think I would say fun. Ended up being not all that close, unfortunately, with a fourth quarter that was not really all that competitive. But for the first 6 minutes, it looked like a totally different game. And then the Thunder just came out and completely mauled Denver's bench, which was certainly a concern coming into the season that we'll talk more about on this show. But first, hey, go follow all of the Game Theory's social media channels over on X/Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you get good social media content. GMAC is doing a great job, Andrew Claudio, of running those things. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're here for the first time. We have a good time. We're going to break down games live. We're going to talk through a whole lot of stuff, and we live film the podcast here. So come join us and hang out. Okay. Oklahoma City beats Denver 102 to 87. The story tonight was Chet Holmgren. He had 25 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 4 blocks. He was just everywhere, all over the place. Was absolutely a monster on offense. There's not really another way to put it. He was completely dominant on offense. It was a ridiculous performance. Defensively, we'll talk about some of the things that we saw. I think that the block and steal numbers probably overstayed his impact a little bit defensively. And again, like we'll kind of dive into what we saw in the first 6 minutes and early on in that third quarter when him and Jokic kind of went back and forth a little bit. But by and large, I thought this was all about Chet tonight. His ability to space the court, play a perimeter 5-out game, to consistently attack from the perimeter, find his spots. What I liked most about his aggression tonight was that he seemed to relish taking advantage of mismatches. And typically someone like him, you wouldn't think that Michael Porter Jr. is necessarily a mismatch physically. But when he saw Michael Porter Jr. tonight on the other side from him, it felt like he thought that was a mismatch. Not putting a big on him felt like a mismatch. Not putting somebody who is fantastic as an on-ball defender. That felt like Chet felt like it was a mismatch tonight. So that was the most important takeaway from tonight. And when we break down Oklahoma City's offense, we'll kind of talk through a few things that I saw beyond that. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, also a fantastic game, 28 points, 8 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals, 2 turnovers. Again, I did not think Shai actually had a fantastic night on defense either. Had some really lazy doubles against Jokic that we'll talk about whenever we break down that film as well. Aaron Wiggins was fantastic, I felt like, off the bench. Jalen Williams didn't quite seem like himself. He's obviously still getting back from that injury that he suffered in the preseason. So a very interesting game from the Oklahoma City side. From the Denver side, they come out like gangbusters. They go up 18-10 in the first quarter. It looks like their starters are going to absolutely blow the doors off of the Thunder starters. And by and large, Denver starters were fine in this game. You look through at the scorecard, you look through at the plus minus. Christian Brown in his minutes, 29 minutes, he was a +8. Jokic was a -9. Murray was a -2. Porter was a -2. Gordon was a -4. They basically played Oklahoma City starters pretty close to even, I would argue. It wasn't that far off of the mark. The issue was something that we've talked a lot about throughout the preseason with Denver. Denver's bench was horrendously bad in this game, I thought. Julian Strawther ends up with 6 points on 6 shots. We're going to run through some tape here. I thought he was really bad on defense, and Oklahoma City persistently attacked him. Peyton Watson ends up with 2 points on 1 for 7 shooting. Russell Westbrook, we know that there's going to be an integration period here. But man, he goes 2 for 10, 6 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 turnovers. But it just felt even uglier than what that box score said. And I love Russell. I think people that are long-term listeners of this show will know that I'm basically a Russ apologist. But I respect how hard he plays, but it was chaos tonight when he was on the court. And I mean that in a more negative way than what I normally do. So let's just kind of run through some of what I saw from Oklahoma City tonight on offense against Denver's defense. And we're going to start largely with that little period in the first quarter. 2:43 left in the first quarter. Oklahoma City's already leading. They've already clawed back everything here in terms of the start. But something Oklahoma City does about as well as any team, really. I would say Boston maybe does this exceptionally well too and deserves credit. They get the matchups they want with simple actions. You can see here already, Alex Caruso's arm is up. He's got his fist up. He's saying, I'm going to set a screen. He sees that Julian Strawther is picking him up. They want, Oklahoma City that is, they want to get Peyton Watson, who is a long athletic defender, off of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and get Julian Strawther, a defender that I have never really valued. I actually think he's always been quite poor on defense, unfortunately. If you look through the draft guide that I wrote back in, what was this, 2023, just the weaknesses for Strawther. I had him as like a mid-40s pick, probably too low for where he's going to end up in his career. He looks like he's going to be a little bit better than this. He'll be a good bench player just because of the offense. But you can see here, big issues stem from his lack of athleticism on defense. Doesn't have a ton of lateral quickness. Because of it, he has to try to be over-aggressive at times to try to overcompensate. Gets caught on pump fakes and driven by in a straight line regularly. Plays very high in his stance, which means he struggles to change direction if he gets caught in a bit of space. And someone can change speed and direction on him. Doesn't deal well with screens. Has a chance to be a magnet for opposing teams in those settings against high-level creators. Guys that even at the mid-major level regularly rejected screens against them and consistently got penetration into the paint. I mean, look, you can just see this immediately on this first possession, right? They get the switch onto Strawther early. Shai just kind of lulls him to sleep. Pump fake. He falls for the pump fake. Obvious foul. Shai goes to the line. This one. Pretty good closeout there this time by Strawther, right? You see him come out. Does a good job staying down. Doesn't jump. This is off of an offensive rebound. Wiggins just kind of bumps him, right? He just didn't feel strong enough to be able to deal with stopping those guys from getting to the spots they wanted in this game. This one, early second quarter. Early screen from Cason Wallace. I thought Oklahoma City's willingness to use guard screen actions in this game, like they always do. This is nothing new for Oklahoma City. Mark Daigneault is so fantastic at being able to find these actions. The thing that was so weird for me was I'm not totally sure why Dario Saric was on Cason Wallace here. Look, this is a lineup where there isn't really a great option in terms of who you put Saric on. If you can see here, Oklahoma City has on Caruso, AJ Mitchell, Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams. That's 5 guards. If you have 5 guards on the court, you can't play Dario Saric. You just can't do it. It's unfortunate. It's the reality of where he is in his game. You just kind of can't do it at this point in his career. It was the reason why he kind of ended up exiting Golden State's rotation by the midseason-ish, late season point last year, maybe like 2/3 of the way through the season. You just kind of lost trust in him defensively at the end of the day. So this time, they're trying to get a mismatch here. Jalen Williams on Dario Saric. This is just too easy. And then this one, I mean, again, what did the scout say from college when Julian Strawther was at Gonzaga? Has to overcompensate, falls for pump fakes regularly. I mean, that is rough. That's I don't even know how you really fall for that one as an NBA player. This one, this is just a really fun set. This is where we start to get into like Chet domination here. Oklahoma City here is running. It's not dissimilar to like a stack pick and roll, where essentially Shea is going to get over to this side here. And Chet's just going to kind of slip it. It's the same concept as a stack pick and roll. And then Wiggins is essentially screening for the screener or the switch, the guy who's going to have to end up going on to Chet here. In this case, it's going to be one of Porter or Jokic, and you can just see that Wiggins is going to carve out this space. The principles are similar to a stack pick and roll. We'll talk a lot about stack pick and rolls with Dallas, but it's just coming from the side here, right? So this one, Wiggins, you can already see Shea engages Jokic, so he's got two defenders on him. Wiggins realizes this is going to have to be the help defender. He just goes and carves it out and creates a wide open opportunity for Chet here. Chet's able to attack a closeout, get it out to Wiggins, and this is what 5-out offense does. It's just a little too easy, right? So this one, Chet Holmgren on Michael Porter Jr., just aggressive. I was so happy to see Chet just be aggressive, go through contact, be physical. Anybody that's ever watched Chet Holmgren in high school at Gonzaga knows he is far from afraid of physicality. There is no part of him that has any concern going through somebody's body. It's just the physical piece of it. Is he capable of doing it? I mean, I don't necessarily know how much stronger he's gotten, but the aggression is there. It's always going to be there. And I like the confidence to be able to attack Porter in space there. This one, I thought Jokic was quite bad defensively in this game. Just going to get into space. Jokic kind of gets into no man's land here. This is a really fun little action. Throughout the course of the game, Oklahoma City really went to kind of some middle Chicago actions here, zoom actions, whatever you want to call them, getting into dribble handoffs. This one is Shea coming around multiple screens here. 1, 2, 3, taking the dribble handoff. And that's going to force, because Brown is already trailing here, Jokic is going to have to engage. He's going to absolutely have to engage, which means one of two things is going to have to happen. Realistically, one of Murray or Gordon is going to have to tag, but this is all happening with speed is the issue. Or that's Porter in the corner. I'm sorry, it's not Gordon. Porter's just late on the tag, and it just opens this wide open lane for Chet to be able to attack. Coming down the court again. Chet just kind of hesitates and lulls Jokic to sleep. Aggression. That's the big key here for Chet Holmgren. Another kind of middle Chicago zoom action kind of thing. We're going to get the ball to Shea. Again, hunting the mismatches that you want for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and then Shea is able to attack them, right? So ball screen here after we get Murray on to Jalen Williams. Denver was playing all night like they were switching 1 through 4. You know that Murray is going to eventually end up switching on to Shea here. And that's the matchup you want against the starters. So you're attacking mismatches constantly. And then This is Chet, just comfortable getting into the mid-range. He made a couple of those shots tonight. And then finally, what is going to happen on this play? We're going to get Wiggins. Oh, we're going to get another Strother jump here into a Jalen Williams dunk. The reason that the Strother pump fake, closeout is important here. He gets off his feet here. He's completely done at this point. That's going to force Peyton Watson to come over and help. And that's going to lead to the kick out from Aaron Wiggins to Jalen Williams here. So you see the help there from Watson. He has a long closeout onto Jalen Williams. Slam. Look, guys, this is not the full strength Thunder is the scary thing. That's where I would be most worried right now if I was another team. And really the only team I think that shouldn't be really worried is Boston. But if I was Boston, this is the team that's the hardest matchup for me at the end of the day. This is a scary, scary team that is only going to get better when they get Isaiah Hartenstein there. And by the way, I do want to call out this fact. I do think that this game, by and large, showed exactly why Oklahoma City went out to sign Isaiah Hartenstein, even though it resulted in an Oklahoma City 15-point win on the road to open the season against the team that won the title, 18 months ago. There were still moments here where Chet struggled to deal with Jokic. So Jokic here, what I want you guys to pay attention to when Jokic comes down the court is just look at all of the eyes on him. Jalen's body is pointed this way. Lou Dort, his body is pointed this way. He's looking. Isaiah Joe, his body is pointed this way. He's looking. Chet is picking up the ball. Shea, he's looking, asking where Chet is to pick up the ball, it looks like here. Or at least saying, hey, go pick him up higher. That's all 5 dudes here just immediately staring at him, saying, hey, we got to go get this guy. So Chet goes up, picks up the ball. Because all these guys are turned, Lou's body is turned here, and that just creates a wide open Jamal Murray. The gravity that Jokic has is just absolutely insane. And in my opinion, it's going to be a little bit different when Hartenstein is there, because this is a lot of what Jokic did, right? He was going to back down Chet into a post up. Again, look at these. You have 3-on-2 here, and both of these dudes are just looking directly at Jokic, and you have the 3-on-2 because you've come to double the block, right? Oklahoma City came to double most of the time against Jokic because they felt like that was the best strategy. I don't know that it was necessarily. Jokic ends this game with 13 assists versus 2 turnovers. He only had 16 points. They made him a passer, but I don't know if I want to make Jokic a passer. Jokic is one of the best passers of all time. So here, you just see that Jokic is able to pick out one of those 3 guys at the top that I pointed out a second ago against the 2. So you have 3-on-2 here. It's almost always going to be Brown that cuts because he's an extremely aggressive cutter. Jokic finds him. But part of that happens, or largely all of that happens, because Oklahoma City wants to double against Jokic on the block because they don't really trust Chet to be able to guard him one-on-one. And I don't think that's an unfair sentiment. So this one, ball screen, Jokic. Chet just has to be so aggressive trying to use his length. He has to fall for so many of those little weird up fakes that Jokic goes for because he's not quite strong enough to just hold and maintain his position against a 265, 270 pound dude like this. It's really, really hard for him to deal with. So this one, Jokic, just very early, very sharp, quick at making decisions. He's always going to move the ball quickly. This one, Jokic ends up throwing the ball in because they end up having multiple guys help off of Christian Braun, who they were pretty comfortable letting shoot tonight. Christian Braun ends up going 0 for 3 from 3. I was going to say, I didn't think I remembered him making a 3. Braun had a good game tonight. He had 16 points, but by and large, they were very comfortable leaving Christian Braun open. And that's the issue with potentially letting go of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You know, KCP, you probably don't leave him here. That forces Chet to kind of X out down. Wiggins is going to have to go up onto Jokic. It's just the amount of gravity that Jokic has. It absolutely is. Everything about it. So here, this is one of the most disgusting passes I've seen yet this year. Just absolutely whips this thing directly into the corner for Braun. They eventually score on a putback. But I just want people to point out, or I just wanted to point out on Jokic, just how smart this guy is, right? So I think that right there, when he turns his head here and kind of backs out, that's when he sees that Braun is filtered to the corner. And the whole time, his whole goal here now is just to set it up so he can get to that pass. AJ Mitchell knows that he has to help deep in. And that's just going to set up this opportunity because Michael Porter Jr. is a shooter. Shea has to at least be cognizant of that. He can't sell out to cut off this lane. You also have Aaron Gordon cutting in after the entry pass. Shea and AJ have to be somewhat cognizant of that. That's where Aaron Gordon and Jokic's chemistry together is so critical and essential, because Aaron knows that if he makes that cut, he's going to force one of these guys to help. Or if he doesn't, he's going to get the pass from Jokic. I mean, that ball is on a line, no look, ton of velocity, just completely ridiculous. This one, Jokic, they get the switch they want. I grabbed this one again just to showcase. Look how many eyes are on Jokic here as soon as the screen comes. You've got Chet trying to get through the screen. You've got Jalen here. And you've got, is that Shea? That might be Shea. A little hard to tell. Coming up here. Yeah, it's Shea. Just gets lost with Braun backdoor because he's trying to pay attention to what Jokic is going to do. And again, they want to double a lot of the time. So this one, Shea's going to come in and give kind of a half-hearted double. That's just the last thing you can do against Jokic, is a half-hearted double coming from the same side. This is just deadly against Jokic, but it's because they don't think Chet can hold up on the block like this. And I mean, just look at him moving Chet backward. You kind of understand why. So this one, Porter going to get the wide open 3 again. Jokic is going to go get the ball again, reset on the block, and you get the double from Shea coming off here. And that's just going to lead Porter to cut. As soon as he sees Shea's back turned, he's going to cut, and he knows that he's going to get the feed. It's another easy bucket, right? So why am I showing all of this on a night when Oklahoma City won by 15 points and probably could have won by more if they wanted to? It's because I think this matchup's actually going to get harder for Denver. When Hartenstein is there, they're not going to be as aggressive doubling. They're not going to be as aggressive saying we need to send multiple bodies to Jokic. It's not like Oklahoma City isn't aware that Jokic is the world's best passer. This isn't new information to them. But when they get Hartenstein, they're not going to have to help off of the shooters and cutters. And if Hartenstein can hold up against Jokic, and then they have Chet coming over from the weak side, if he gets too deep, it's going to make life harder for Denver to run real offense. This is kind of one that I feel like Denver had to get against Oklahoma City. We'll see if they can figure out an adjustment down the road for it. But yeah, Denver's bench, and Chet tonight were the big stories. Both of those things were absolutely fantastic. Or at least one of them was fantastic for Oklahoma City. I guess the Denver bench was also fantastic for Oklahoma City too. But that's really what this game came down to. And Oklahoma City looks every bit like the buzzsaw that we thought they were in the preseason. Their perimeter defense was very strong. Really, it was just the interior. And by the way, the scariest thing maybe here, Denver had 17 offensive rebounds. That probably changes when Hartenstein is back. And Oklahoma City only goes 8 for 36 from 3. So they didn't shoot well. They didn't have their Jokic interior defender. And they still won by 15 on the road in Denver. And I don't think this says a lot about Denver being like way worse. Their bench unit might be worse than what we thought. But I don't think this says a lot about Denver as a team being way worse than what we thought. I think it says more about Oklahoma City being particularly quite good and particularly well equipped to deal with this matchup. Let's get to a quick little note from PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money action. There are over 10 million members. Like I said a second ago, they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks always puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. We are big fans of PrizePicks here. We absolutely love the app and what they're doing for the daily fantasy sports scene. Download the app today and use code GameTheory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code GameTheory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, let's go to the first game here. Let's talk about Dallas and San Antonio. Dallas ends up winning this game 120 to 109. San Antonio largely kept this like quite close for the first half. They were winning at the end of the first half. And then Dallas's offense just completely went into overdrive in the third quarter. They scored 40 in the third quarter. And if you've, again, listened to any of the preseason coverage that I gave, what I was most excited about with Dallas was the offensive side. Dallas with Klay Thompson, I think, has a real chance to be exceptionally difficult to guard because of the spacing that he will provide on the weak side and some of the ways that he's going to allow them to get into different actions. Now, one thing I didn't necessarily expect, but was pleasantly surprised by, was Dallas's willingness to actually run more sets and not just, early Luka ball screens, early Kyrie ball screens, and then trying to have Klay on the weak side and have somebody tag. They weren't as stationary as what I expected. And part of the reason they've done this is they've actually moved a little bit more 5 out, it feels like right now, where Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, guys like that, they're actually kind of handling the ball and running dribble handoffs on the perimeter now. That's what's interesting about what Dallas is doing on offense. So again, we'll just kind of run through some clips here and talk through what worked for Dallas in this game. I think it was actually quite a lot that worked for Dallas here. So you get an early double drag kind of in transition into a stack pick and roll. Essentially, double drag into stack is going to be exceptionally difficult to guard for anybody when that guy, Klay Thompson, is the guy coming, screening for the screener, and then coming up to shoot the 3. Klay is a willing screener, and he is probably the second best shooter we've ever seen. So this one, he gets the screen on PJ's guy and then shoots up San Antonio throughout the night was kind of trying to switch these actions. So Keldon goes to the big. Collins stays home there onto Lively. And they forced guys like Harrison Barnes to fight through. He ends up missing this one, but it's kind of a barometer for what was going to happen the rest of the night. Second quarter now, you're going to get Lively coming up, setting a ball screen for Luka. Trey Jones sees that Steph Castle is getting caught on this screen and just flies over. I'm not 100% sure why he did this. This isn't really something I have seen a lot of, where a player has come all the way from the weak side to try and cut off. Like, if you're going to do this, I feel like you should be telling Steph not to try and get over the screen. You should just be telling him to switch. But yeah, very bizarre. There were some bizarre rotations from San Antonio in this game. Luka immediately realizes it, obviously, just drills Hardy directly in the shooting pocket, nails the three. Then we get into the third quarter. PJ Washington leads the break. Klay comes down, drills this three. I pulled this one. It's not a set, not a play, anything like that. But PJ, like, sort of kind of beats Harrison Barnes here, but he has Wemby on the backside. Champagnie can't help in here at the elbow. He is responsible for one of the 5 best shooters of all time, let's say comfortably. And that is one pass away. I have no idea why we're trying to double PJ Washington here and leaving Klay Thompson open, but those are decisions that will be made. And if you do that, and if you're not steady and solid and sharp in your defensive decision making, Klay's going to crush you. That's the difference for Dallas this year. That used to be like Derrick Jones last year. And you could do that. You could help off of Champagnie, and Klay probably wouldn't hurt you. He will hurt them. He will absolutely hurt you now. I think this is like 2 possessions later. Get a couple of staggers for Luka. Luka ends up driving, getting into the lane against Sohan and Wemby. I thought Sohan had a pretty decent game, to be honest with you, but he had to deal with Luka. He had like 18 points himself. The reason that I put this here, though, is because look at what that made 3 from a minute ago on the clock resulted in. Instead of considering like tagging in any way, shape, or form, Champagnie just stays home on Klay. Luke already has 2 feet in the paint here, and he's still outside of the paint. And that's a big reason why Gafford gets the rebound here and ends up getting the foul. This one, Luka trying to get early offense here. Again, if you do not pick him up in transition, if you are not as tight as humanly possible in your rotations and coverages, Klay is going to crush you. This is a luxury that Dallas did not have last year and that they have now. This is literally the next possession from what the last one was. So Klay's drilled like 2 threes in the last 3 possessions and has also been hugely responsible for an offensive rebound that led to free throws. See, now we're going to get into what I was talking about before in terms of playing 5 out, utilizing the big as a dribble handoff player. So this is going to be essentially a zoom or a, middle Chicago, whatever you want to call it. Kyrie's going to come set a screen. Gafford's going to come set a screen. And then PJ Washington's going to come up. That's a terrible arrow. My goodness. Sorry. Klay's going to come up and take the dribble handoff. Dallas playing like full scale 5 out now, as opposed to having more stagnant, kind of steady, offense where essentially Luka and Kyrie are taking ball screens and there's not a ton of movement. That's a real differentiator for Dallas. This offense has a chance to be very special, I think. So what ends up happening here is Klay gets a screen here from PJ. You get the Kyrie screen, you get the Gafford screen, and Klay is going to be the one that comes all the way around. And once that happens, it's just chaos at that point. Champagny is chasing because Klay engages Wemby here. The weak side player remaining on this side of the court has to tag Gafford. The problem is the weak side player remaining on this side of the court is Kyrie's man, which means Kyrie is now wide open for 3. This stuff is going to be fairly deadly for Dallas. This one, Luka gets this rebound, drives down the court. I mean, this is just an obscene pass, right? I mean, Luka can still do that stuff. Luka takes a ball screen here. This is just a classic stack pick and roll. We went through stack on the show on Tuesday night, but for people who weren't here, stack pick and roll is pick and roll for Luka here. He's going to come across. Lively's going to screen, and then he's going to roll to the rim. And Klay is back there, and he's going to try and screen Lively's guy, who in this case is Wemby, to either create a lob or just confusion before he filters out to the top for a potential open 3. And that's exactly what happens here. Significant confusion all night for San Antonio on stack pick and rolls. They had no idea how they were going about trying to guard them. Sohan tries to get through the screen. Steph Castle stays attached. Wemby ends up staying deep in the paint. It's just too easy. Little off-ball screen for Klay here. 1 dribble handoff, 2 dribble handoffs. Essentially a pass into a ball screen. This is where 5 out is going to be killer for Dallas. Like, they can do creative stuff like this. In part, a big reason why is because of this guy. Lively is very, very comfortable on the perimeter, handling the ball. He can very easily play in actions like this. 1, 2, 3, come through. If you're not right up on Luka, it's curtains. The other thing that those actions do. Got 1, got 2. It's going to throw off where Wemby is in his drop. You've got 1 coming through. He has to be aware of those guys coming through. Luka sets up and fires. And then this last one is, again, just an example. Another stack pick and roll, right? So Lively up. The other thing about stack pick and rolls are that you can filter through whatever way you want. If you're the guy screening for the screener, Lively for the most part is always going to roll that way. This one's just kind of wild because Klay immediately figures out, okay, Keldon Johnson is going to do something a little bit wild here and just fly to the ball with his hands up. And he just filters out to the wing. It looks kind of ridiculous on Keldon's part. My immediate reaction was like, wait, what is Keldon Johnson doing? I would like to know a little bit more about what they were trying to do in these actions before just completely blaming Keldon for coming out like the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man. But like, it's very easy that this could be like Wemby just sitting in the paint and not guarding anybody. It could be very easily that they're trying to like switch this in some way, or it could be that Chris Paul's like trying to get through. There are a lot of different ways that people could be at fault here, but Keldon Johnson flying up at the ball and just leaving Klay Thompson one pass away from Luka Doncic was definitely not on my bingo card. I will say that. So yeah, Dallas looks great. This is where I'm at. Dallas looks every bit like a team that has a chance to certainly contend to get back to the finals. Doncic goes for 28. Klay in his debut goes for 22 on 7 of 13, has 7 rebounds, 3 steals. Luka did end up with 28, 10, and 8, which is just an absurd line. Lively has 15, 11, and 6. The 6 there, the assist number is enormous for Lively. I think you're going to see a lot of assists from him in dribble handoff situations, just kind of operating at the top like that. For San Antonio, I don't have much to say. I did not think they played particularly well offensively in this game. No Devin Vassell, of course. Absolutely worth bringing that up because he is an enormous part of what they do on offense. But man, I didn't think they looked all that good on defense, just in terms of rotations and togetherness, right? I didn't think that they looked all that good on offense because they just didn't have anybody who it felt like could really, really create against Dallas. I don't really even know what to make of Dallas's defense yet. Like I'm excited to watch a game next week just to kind of maybe get a more substantial look at it. But San Antonio is just incredibly young. Victor Wembanyama, Jeremy Sohan, obviously in the starting lineup. Keldon Johnson is still like 25 or so. Trey Jones is 23 or 24. Steph Castle played 18 minutes. He's a rookie. It's just a lot of youth right now. And it felt that way based on how they rotated around defensively and based on how they played offensively as well. Okay. Let's go back in time a little bit to last night. We're going to talk about Houston and Charlotte. Charlotte beats Houston. It was a home game for Houston. Houston obviously has enormous expectations. I think that they've kind of put on themselves coming into the year. Again, I don't want to say I'm not low on Houston by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like Houston fans feel like there is this like expectation that they take a leap next season. And I'm not quite there on that. Or this season, I'm sorry. They might take a leap next season, but this season that they take a leap. And to me, this team is still so young that I wouldn't, like, if they tread water, given how insane the West is this year, where there are 12 to 13 teams realistically trying to contend and compete for a playoff spot. If they tread water and are around 500 again, like, I think that's a win for them while they get these guys a little bit more experience and a little bit more age under their belt. Again, like, I don't know if Rockets fans feel that way, but I will say that, like, certainly last night should feel like a disappointment against the Hornets. And why is that? Because no Mark Williams last night, which means Charlotte's center rotation was Nick Richards, Moussa Diabate, and then minutes of Grant Williams playing at the 5. And those Grant Williams minutes were incredibly impressive, as we will talk about. But that's what was happening. On top of it, Brandon Miller goes out 11 minutes into his night. He only has 6 points. So basically, you're talking about a team here that was LaMelo Ball, who was a monster in this game. Miles Bridges, Caleb Martin, Trey Mann, who played great. And then it was like Vasa Micic playing 17 minutes. Seth Curry played 26 minutes. Diabate, who was their first player off the bench. And I have no idea where that came from outside of Mark Williams being out. Like, I would have never guessed that, like, Diabate was going to be ahead of Tidjane Salon in the rotation even. Maybe they feel better about him playing center, I guess. But it's just not a team that you should really lose your opener to if you're the Rockets. And what went wrong here for the Rockets? I think Rockets fans, their coaching staff will probably point to the fact that they shoot 13 of 43 from three. Fred VanVleet goes 4 of 18. Dylan Brooks goes 1 of 6. In general, I did not think Brooks or VanVleet played all that well. I would guess that will be one of VanVleet's like 5 worst games of the year. He really, really did not shoot it. And I didn't even think he was awesome on defense, dealing with some of the matchups that Charlotte was able to get on him with LaMelo, particularly just dealing with the size advantage that LaMelo has at times when he was able to get switched on to VanVleet. But I also just want to say that, Alperen Sengun goes for 25 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals. He was their best player last night. He was fantastic last night. The difference right now between Alperen Sengun and like an all-star, like a real, genuine star player, not a guy that we all think probably will be a star at some point, is that guys that are at that level turn last night's game into like a 35 and 18 game or a 40 and 20 game. You're going against Nick Richards and Moussa Diabate. No disrespect to them, but if you're Alperen Sengun, you really should be getting the advantage there. On top of it, as we get the tape up, I thought he just left a lot of points on the board here. I thought he just left a ton of potential opportunities out there offensively. So we'll just kind of jump in and talk. He comes up, sets a screen for Jalen Green. Jalen Green, fantastic play, dunks it. Again, stack pick and rolls, right? They're using Fred as the bottom man in the stack because he's a guy that they trust to come up and be able to have gravity as a shooter. One thing that I want to talk about throughout the course of this is that I think that if I was going against Houston, I would be doubling Sengun post touches and paint touches and basically forcing these guys to shoot me out of games. I would be forcing Houston to make shots with guys like Dylan Brooks, like Jabari Smith, like Cam Whitmore if he's in, like Amen Thompson if he's in, like, Fred I trust. Fred will knock down shots, but basically you can double from a lot of other guys on this team. And that is largely what Charlotte did. So this one, just a sharp stack pick and roll. You get to see Jalen Green get downhill. That's great. One of their first possessions of the game. Second quarter now, though. I love the way they got to this, like little lob play from Cam Whitmore, right? This is essentially an Iverson, 1-4 high set. We talked about one of these with the Lakers to open their second half game on Tuesday night. This set is that Dylan Brooks is going to filter all the way around to that corner. Whitmore is going to do the Iverson cut, quote unquote. Gets the screen there. They're going to enter the ball into Sengun. Typically, the ball on an Iverson cut will go to Whitmore there. But instead of the ball going to Whitmore, they have Jabari screen and Whitmore dive to the rim. It's a nice little counter, a nice little inversion on the way that things work. Typically. Sengun's going to come and screen for Jalen Green here. And this is where I want to start calling out like Grant Williams and them just kind of crowding the paint, right? Against Sengun. I feel like Sengun missed a lot of bunnies at the rim. He went 10 for 22, I think, in this game. Did make 2 of 3 from 3. Didn't go to the line a lot. I think that Sengun has a tendency a little bit of the time to kind of use his lower half and then like kind of lean away. And he's just not going to get foul calls that way. So here, instead of like going all the way into Grant Williams, who is a really, really solid post defender. I think Grant is a great post defender for someone as small as he is. He does a great job just staying big, using his lower half to stop Sengun from getting all the way to the rim. These are the kind of shots, though, that Sengun is going to have to make. He has to make those shots at the rim. This one, you see Nick Richards come in. I mean, he just gets moved by Şengün there. They set like a little rub screen that doesn't do anything, but like that little elbow, right across from Şengün up around his shoulder. Richards, kind of calls it out. You could see there, right? Like he's a little frustrated that he didn't get that call with the elbow. But this is kind of the difference. If you don't double Şengün and don't crowd him around the paint, he's probably going to finish on a lot of these shots. This one, double drag into a flipped final screen. And again, he just kind of smokes the dunk at the rim. Two things I wanted to call out on this play. We all love 3-point volume from Jalen Green. I think it's how he's going to have to live. He has to be able to make shots like this. Jalen Green goes 5 of 15 from 3 last night. I felt like in general, he probably went a little bit too far away from like the driving, attacking downhill game. I really liked that he was mostly downhill in preseason. He got fouled a lot in preseason. Last night, he ends up going to the line 5 times. That was fine. But I think that there's a little bit more scope for him to continue to drive and be aggressive. But again, these are shots. If you're Alperen Şengün, you just kind of can't miss. And look, he doesn't have a lot of lift. Like that's a real factor with Şengün too. You watch somebody like Jokic doesn't have a lot of lift, but he's kind of bigger and longer, and he's able to keep that ball above the rim a little bit when he jumps. Şengün's not always there. This one, you'll get to see Grant Williams just post defense again. Does a great job just kind of forcing Şengün baseline. Shepherd gets the ball back to Van Vliet. And now we start like doubling, bringing guys over because Amen Thompson's on the court. So look who comes off and helps. A men's guy. This is a men's player right here. He comes off and tries to help baseline, contest that shot again. If I'm an opposing team, I'm forcing Houston to try and beat me from the 3-point line or to make Şengün take super, super contested shots at the rim. Again, we get Nick Richards in a ball screen action with Şengün. Crowded. Doubling him, even though there's a body right here with Jabari Smith, who's just like kind of waiting in the dunker spot. Bridges goes up. LaMelo Ball's like pseudo asleep at the wheel, not really helping the helper there. But Şengün just goes up and tries to throw up this like little hook shot, right? Teams are going to keep crowding Houston and keep crowding Şengün and keep putting bodies in the lane. I think until their guards prove that they can beat them. This one, Şengün hits the kick out and Brooks misses the shot, right? This one, again, Grant Williams on the block. They were letting Grant Williams really get away with a lot last night. But as soon as that double comes from Caleb Martin or Cody Martin from the top of the key, here, Şengün sees it, and Fred makes them hurt. Makes it more difficult, right? If you're in a double, you probably want to help double off of Brooks or double off of Amen Thompson here, but they don't do that. Then this one, again, Grant Williams doing a great job on Şengün, forcing him out to like 20 feet. Şengün tries to post. He just pushes him out, pushes him away. Those are hard shots. Those are really, really hard shots to take. So what does this mean for Houston at this point? I don't think much, to be honest. I think it is probably a little bit more indicative of Charlotte being tough and being a really potentially okay defensive team under Charles Lee. At least they're going to have like scouts, right? It feels like they're going to have different ideas in terms of how to play teams, which I don't want to say like Steve Clifford was a little bit asleep at the wheel last year, but it just didn't feel like they were as connected defensively as what we saw last night. And they were tough and they were physical and they were strong. And I think Grant Williams, he ends up in that game with 8 points and 4 rebounds and 1 assist. I mean, he was honestly, if not their second most important player behind LaMelo, third, maybe behind Trey Mann too. Trey Mann did a great job getting buckets, but Charlotte doesn't win that game without either Trey Mann or Grant Williams. So it was very, very impressive to me to see Charlotte playing the way they did. I felt like they played again, just like a sounder strategy than what we've seen in the last couple of years from the Charlotte Hornets. Other notes from me in this game, I thought Dylan Brooks just was not awesome. I didn't think he was particularly as good or as active on defense as what he typically is. I thought Jabari Smith had good moments and bad moments on defense. There were a couple where he fought around screens and battled, dealt with LaMelo Ball on the perimeter. I thought he was pretty good in the fourth quarter on defense. Şengün went out from the 452 mark until about the 130 mark of the fourth quarter. They really like barely closed with Şengün. I think in part it was because they were finding success on defense switching, and then on offense, at least generating open shots, because what they were doing was using Amen Thompson as a screener high up the court, like very, very high up the court. And they were getting these walk-in threes with Fred VanVleet, where it's just like, okay, this is wide open. This is, if not our best player, our second best player, let's just trust that Fred's going to make these pull-up threes. And he's like, didn't do it. Now, the counter to all of this is just, you can have Şengün set screens higher up the court, but when Şengün came back in, they tend to like to use Şengün more in the mid post and around the 3-point line as a screen setter, not like 35 feet, 40 feet up the court. So it's tricky. Like, I think that would be helpful in those moments where you have Nick Richards playing like a super deep drop, just like let Alpi like set the screen super high up the court. But then like Alpi had like a weird freewheel moment later in the game, where he tried to throw like a behind the back pass and it kind of killed the game a little bit at the end of it. I think he kind of like probably overreacted. Ime Udoka did, taking Şengün out for a defensive possession late in the game because Charlotte was really starting to bludgeon them a little bit on the offensive glass. Charlotte ends up with 15 offensive rebounds in this game. I feel like there are reasons for concern if you're Houston, but not enough to where I'm like putting any sort of panic alarms up, just because you had Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks combined, I think, for 5 for 24 from the field last night. It's not going to happen often. It's just not, especially the kind of shots that Fred VanVleet was getting. He was getting open threes. The last guy I'll point out is Amen Thompson. I thought he was everywhere in the first half. An awesome cut back door against LaMelo. He had a drive to get a foul, made a three off the catch, took and made, I think, like a pull-up mid-range jumper. Had a couple of moments in transition, had an awesome like one-legged mid-range finish. They used him as a screener late in the game for guards. They had him short roll as well. He's just a really awesome chess piece for Houston out there. I really enjoyed the way they utilized them. I think it was smart. And the other piece of it is I've had some questions about Amen and Alperen in terms of their potential connection on the court. I do think that we saw a few moments where you could idealize the vision of Amen is just this incredible cutter and unbelievable playmaker and downhill force, to where if you have Alperen like high up the court and Amen's man like turns his head at all, or if you run some sort of action involving an exchange with a men's guy and Alperen up high, Alperen's going to hit him on cuts and he's going to feed him. And I think that's kind of a way to get Amen involved gravity wise in the half court on offense. A lot of concerns if you're a Houston fan. I get it. I just think that with this one, anytime you get your vets that played as poorly as they did last night, it's probably not going to go all that well, especially with VanVleet. Jabari Smith's another guy that, we barely mentioned him, but like didn't play great. He didn't look super comfortable, I didn't think, out there. So maybe it's just that game. Hopefully we'll figure it out and we'll see where he lands. Last game we want to run through: Detroit and Indiana. If you're an Indiana fan, I apologize. I'm not going to talk a lot about Indiana in this game. And the reason for that is that if you're an Indiana fan, you know that your team is good. You also know that your team largely brought back everybody from the team that was there last year. So I don't think we need to do like some deep dive into what the Pacers are. Pacers are an awesome basketball team. They are going to be a playoff team this year. There's just not a lot to say. Best wishes to James Wiseman. We hope that his Achilles gets healthy enough so he can play next season. The reason I was a lot more interested in Detroit in this game is new coach, competent coach who's not totally asleep at the wheel like Monty Williams was last year. And I wanted to understand what they were trying to do with Cade Cunningham to get him the ball. I wanted to understand what they were going to look like on defense as well. Because Bickerstaff has a great reputation league-wide as an awesome defensive coach. I think by and large, you saw a lot of moments of high-level defense last night from Detroit, especially in the first half. Eventually, Indiana adjusted and understood where they could pressure Detroit, and that was at the ball screen point of attack with Jalen Duren. We'll talk about that in a second. But by and large, I thought there was a real improvement defensively from Detroit last night. Their perimeter players were more active and engaged. They communicated more. It felt like there was a real sense of growth there. The big key, though, to me is that I wanted to know how they were going to utilize Cade Cunningham. What spots are you going to get Cade the ball on the court? What kind of actions are you going to utilize him within in order to get him mismatches? And I felt like they had a really good plan to kind of do all of those things last night. Cade ends up going for 28 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, only 2 turnovers. Went 10 for 23 from the field. Part of my issue with Cade right now is that he needs to take an offseason and just kind of rework, I think, some of his gathers and pickups on his drives and when he's getting to the rim and trying to go up for finishes. I think that his footwork in those settings really lets him down and his length becomes less meaningful in terms of using his extension. He's strong. He's physical. He looks even more physical and strong than what he looked last year. He's a guy that is like 6'6", 220 pounds, whatever he is. And he looks even stronger right now. Like his shoulders look bigger. He's somebody that dudes would just bounce off of in the lane. I feel like there is real room for growth in terms of the way that he uses his feet. I would love to see him like study guys like Luka. I would love to see him study guys even like Donovan Mitchell. Like both of their footwork as below the rim finishers is really elite. I think that's where Cade needs to get to, and that's where the inefficiency tends to come from for Cade. He got to the line 6 times last night. That was a good sign, in my opinion. So let's jump in and talk about Cade. This is the first set of the JB Bickerstaff era. Essentially ends up being like a ball screen into a double drag dribble handoff where you get this Tobias Harris flip and you get this back screen here for Hardaway, setting up a Tobias Harris rim run for a dunk. Then on top of it, you still have Jalen Duren here, and he's going to set a screen for Hardaway's man, almost in like a stack or a Spain pick and roll kind of action, right? You're screening for the screener. We love screen the screener actions here. They are really, really difficult to guard. Hardaway is going to clip Siakam here, Tobias Harris's man. And then Duren is going to clip Hardaway's man, Tyrese Halliburton. Fantastic. That's the way offense should look. And I think what you can't overestimate here in any way, shape, or form is the impact of spacing for the Detroit Pistons on offense already in game one. They look so much cleaner and crisper on offense. There was actually room for Jaden Ivey to drive. He ends up with 17 points on 13 shots and 9 free throw attempts. He smoked a couple of layups that he could have made. Cunningham had like real space to operate. In Cade's case, it's not driving all the way to the rim like it is in Ivey's case. It's more, does he have time to operate in that mid-range area on his drives? He had the time finally because Tobias Harris was out there. Tim Hardaway was out there. Malik Beasley was out there. Simone Fontecchio was out there. They just had dudes that were willing to take threes and dudes that teams have to guard from beyond the 3-point line. This one, late second quarter. Just a really little sharp action here, right? So again, impact of spacing. Tim Hardaway just sets like this little rub screen, but then filters to the corner. Then you get Jalen Duren, who comes to set a screen, and then he's going to roll to the rim. What we want to pay attention to here is this is Ben Mathurin. So like Ben is not the most intuitive off-ball defender a lot of the time. But if that was Ron Holland in the corner, or if this was Ron Holland over in this corner here where Malik Beasley is, Halliburton would be coming over to tag. I'm sure Mathurin would be told, you got to go tag. Instead, because you have real shooters in the corners, that is an easy rim run for Jalen Duren. That's space that the Pistons just did not have last year. I'm telling you, I will ask Bryce about this on the podcast on Sunday if you want me to. I watched too many Pistons games last year, probably because of Bryce. That is something they just did not have access to all that often last season. Third quarter now, Cade was a monster in the third quarter. I think he had like 18 in the third quarter. This was a really fun set to be able to get Cade emptied into the corner and into a potential post up. And this is where I think he actually has a chance to really thrive. He is just bigger and stronger than guys like Andrew Nembhard. It's hard for Nembhard to deal with him on the block. He's just going to move him. Like watch Cade just like kind of continue to carve out space. Eventually gets all the way into the semicircle from like starting his post up here, and his left foot ends up in the semicircle. That's just tough to deal with. It's really, really hard to deal with. And again, another thing that you have to point out, last year, I think Siakam just crashes in doubles. I think Tyrese Halliburton would just crash or double and not think twice about it. But because it's Tobias Harris and because it's Tim Hardaway Jr. on the perimeter, they can't really do that. So Cade goes up, makes a little hook shot. Again, they saw it work once. We're going to go to the post again. This is against Aaron Naismith, who's a really good defender and is strong enough to deal with Cade. That's why Cade doesn't try and go all the way to the rim this time. Instead, he gets to his little fade series, knocks down this fadeaway mid-range jumper. But again, notice that like Siakam can't really help because, again, he's guarding Tobias Harris. And that's a better shot that Detroit would probably prefer, and that Indiana prefers that Cade just takes this fadeaway mid-range jumper at the end of the day. It's like, this is fine. This is probably a 45% look for Cade. I mean, an open top of the key 3-point shot here from Tobias Harris. I mean, that's got to be 40% if Pascal comes all the way down and helps and Cade hits the kick out. If he's that open, I would guess he makes that at 40%. That's 0.9 points per possession versus 1.2 points per possession. It's the right call from Siakam, but it's just more space for Cade to operate. So you would expect his numbers to go up this year because he has the space and because he has the time. This one, we get into a nice little Chicago action for Jaden Ivey. And I put this one on here to kind of showcase the impact of poor spacing shooters or poor shooters, right? So what I want you to see here is that we're going to get to this little, it's a middle Chicago, Zoom, DHO, whatever you want to call it. Ivey's going to be able to get downhill here, but look at how aggressive Siakam is this time at already helping and being in the paint when he's guarding Ron Holland. He's already sliding over. He's already there. He's already underneath the rim. Shooters matter. Spacing matters. Holland can't make them pay. This one, again, Cade, get into like a little double on ball. Just a ridiculous finish, right? Absolutely ridiculous finish. Again, though, look, Obi Toppin is like feet in the paint here, one pass away because Ron Holland is in the corner. That's an insane finish from Cade. It's a ridiculous finish. He doesn't always do it, but when he does, it looks pretty. Again, they set up this little double on ball. This time they go all the way under. I think that's with Enrique Freeman is the big this time. He's just not really big enough to take up a ton of space there. And then this one, fourth quarter, again, we're going to get into the post, if I remember correctly. Oh, no, we're just going to face up Pascal here and drive him and finish. But again, power of shooters. Power of shooters all over the court. Pascal is stuck on an island there with Cade Cunningham because Tobias Harris, real shooter. Tim Hardaway Jr., real shooter. Stewart's not spacing, but Stewart can at least step away and knock down a shot. And then that's Malik Beasley in the corner. That's like a real shooting lineup. And you gave Cade a ton of space to operate and go. And again, Cade's skilled, man. I think based off of the way that they set up their actions and based off of the way that they were able to get him into spots, if they win enough games, I think he probably makes the All-Star game. I just don't know if they're going to win enough games. I'm not convinced, but they look better, in my opinion, playing this tight game at home. I thought they looked a little bit better than Charlotte, even though Charlotte won on the road against Houston. I thought that their defense looked a little bit more sound. They were just playing a better team in Indiana. The one piece of it that I will note, though, and the one piece of it that I would have some slight concerns about if I was a Detroit fan, is Jalen Duren on defense. I thought he was really bad in the second half on defense. There's just kind of not another way to put it. And this is something that, Bryce and I have talked about a lot on the show. I don't think he's active enough in ball screen defense. If Detroit is going to win 35 games or so and show like real significant improvement, this is the guy that it's going to come down to. They need Jalen Duren to actually be able to guard in ball screens. It was their biggest problem on defense last year. And in the second half last night, I would argue it was their biggest problem again. He has to take a step forward. If he doesn't take a big step forward, they're probably still a bottom 10 defense. He has to get better. Let's just kind of run through and talk about what we see here. So this one, he just kind of gets caught in no man's land there. I get that Andrew Nembhard is like engaging him and that Tim Hardaway Jr. here is like in absolutely no man's land. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody fight through a ball screen like Tim Hardaway does here, where he literally like turns his back to the ball this way. It's bizarre. It's very bizarre. So you can't put all of this on Duren. He has to stay engaged. Honestly, this play, I like that he's low. I like that he's moving his feet. Last year, I felt like he played a little bit too high, and I felt like he didn't move his feet as well. But still, there's just like no recovery. And then you get Miles Turner with like a wide open walk-in jumper. And again, like this is one where the Pistons have to make a decision. Okay, do we bring Jaden Ivey up here to help? And then Turner kicks it out to an open Tyrese Halliburton who makes that shot 40% of the time? Or do you just let Miles Turner get a walk-in three? I mean, maybe you hope that Tobias Harris helps the helper there in that case. I mean, it's a tough spot. It's a really, really tough spot. This one, again, you're going to get a ball screen, and this is one where I think the process is just bad here. Obviously, the result is that it's a miss, but again, I think he's just staying attached a little bit too long here, and he's not closing up the pocket while Ivy tries to recover back into the play. And you can complain about Ivy's positioning here, but they're essentially trying to send Halliburton down this way to try and close off the angle for him. If you're doing that, you have help here. You have help here if you need it. You don't really have help up here because essentially that is a 2-on-1 up here now. Duren's feet and his arms need to be in this pocket here. He cannot allow the pocket pass while Ivy gets back into it. And he goes and gets the rebound, which is good. But this is one where we're in the fourth quarter now. I think that McConnell has just taken a handoff from Mathurin. You get the early Turner slip, and he just doesn't engage at all that time. Doesn't stop the ball at all. Jay's like super attached to Miles Turner here. I don't really know why. He at least needs to like be a presence there, especially given that, you know, if you take just a step this way, you're probably going to dissuade McConnell from taking that shot at the rim, and you're still going to be in position to be able to get back to Turner as well. And that's a really difficult pass to get all the way back to Miles. He just feels like he's in no man's land a little bit too often. This one, you know, just kind of drops back. That's a foul that is just not really good enough. Mathurin just goes into his body. I don't totally know why he like opens his hips and jumps here. He really just needs to like open his hips down that way and drop his hips. Instead, he like jumps into the ball handler. That ends up in 2 free throws. And then this one I put on, this isn't totally Duren. This is a miscommunication of some sort, but I would like to see one of Duren or Tobias Harris run. This is a 4-point game with 2:38 left. That is a rebound for one of the best transition players in the NBA in Tyrese Halliburton. And this guy here, Pascal Siakam, He ended up last night with 19 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds. The other thing he is one of the absolute best bigs in the NBA at running the court. He is insatiable. He sprints. He gets downhill. He absolutely feasts in transition because he sprints the court all the time. And here, I mean, he just absolutely destroys those guys down the court and ends up for a dunk, despite the fact that they have a step on him. So why am I unclear on who this is? Even though it ends up being Duren that's like trailing behind. So just given the numbers, right? Cade's obviously going to take Nembhard. Ivy's obviously going to take Halliburton. And Hardaway's obviously going to take Mathurin based on how they're set up. These two need to communicate, okay, do we want the big trailing? Do we want Jalen Duren as the trailer here? Because we know that Turner is probably going to end up being the trail man. Siakam's going to end up being the, guy sprinting the court. Or do we want Harris on Turner? Regardless, it takes talking here. Given the way they're aligned, it seems like they're setting up that Harris is going to take Turner and that Duren is going to take Siakam. Different teams have different rules. I'm not in the Detroit locker room. I'm not going to sit here and tell you for sure what their rules are. If they always want the big taking the trailer and you need Harris when he's in that spot where Siakam is literally right there. I mean, he's like literally right next to him on the rebound, right? It would be very easy for them to communicate through this and say, Harris is taking Siakam, Duren is taking the trailer. But nobody talks, and he just absolutely obliterates them down the court. Those are the kind of things that can't happen if you're trying to make a big leap. And I don't put that last one 100% on Duren. That is a combo, but I think it's more on Duren than it is on Harris. That's where the Pistons have to get better. They have to get better on defense. They have to get better at the little details, like sprinting the court, running the court, being available. I thought Isaiah Stewart, he had 2 points last night, 4 rebounds. Jalen Duren had 13 points and 13 rebounds. I kind of thought Isaiah Stewart played better, if I'm being honest, because I thought he was better defensively. I thought he was more active. I thought he was aggressive. His physicality was like a real factor for them, it felt like to me. I'm really interested in this Detroit team. I'm really interested in seeing what they can become because I think Cade Cunningham is a real dude. And I think Jaden Ivey has a chance to be something. And I love the fact that they have spacing around those guys now and have gotten a chance to at least showcase what they're capable of. Ivey had driving lanes last night that he's never had in his career for Detroit yet. It was really interesting to watch. He also needs to work on his footwork a little bit, I feel like. But it was really great to see. I thought both of those guys played really good games last night. And I think they're capable of leading this team to something at least interesting this season. For Indiana, look, like I said, really good team. We know that they're a really good team. Mathurin, it was really great to see him get back out on the court. He essentially closed this game, as you can see here. He had 19 points. He was really efficient. He was aggressive rebounding the ball. I thought Miles Turner was a huge turning point for them in this game in the third quarter. Him scoring 20 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks. He was all over the place. His spacing was huge for them. It was a huge reason why Duren got caught in no man's land a lot. Halliburton was okay last night. Didn't play like super well, but his general ability to drive transition play is helpful. Nembhard, it wasn't a big Nembhard night because he had the Cade assignment like he often does with really good guards. And Siakam played somewhat well. But I think that Detroit generally forced these guys into more difficult spots. So I am cautiously optimistic about what I saw from JB Bickerstaff as the leader of the Detroit Pistons last night. I'm obviously optimistic about the Pacers. I think that they just look really good. I think Siakam's passing last night was really interesting. I thought they looked even a little bit better defensively than what they did, early on last season. Maybe not quite as good as what they were in the playoffs last year, but really solid overall on defense. And in general, like, the Pacers are going to be a playoff team, but the Pistons are the one that, like, I'm interested in tracking right now, because I at least find their situation intriguing. Maybe they can win, 32, 33 games this year, because they look like they have gotten better from a process perspective on both ends of the court. I will note, for the record, I said this last season after game 1-2, and that did not end up going well, because they lost 30 freaking games in a row, like within 5 weeks of that. So sometimes you can read too much into game 1 assessments. Regardless, that's the show for tonight. Shout out to PrizePicks. Use that promo code Game Theory. Get $50 off once you play a $5 lineup, or receive $50 once you get a $5 lineup. Go to the Game Theory social media channels: X/Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Game Theory Sam V. We'll do more of these throughout the season. I'm having fun doing these. I'm watching games. I might as well just go live. I'm here in Australia, so it's still sunny. It's 5:00 here. There's no reason not to go live after these games. I'm excited to do it. That's all we got, though. Until next time, we'll talk soon.